In this fictional interview, we explore the perspectives of an imagined songwriter of Jackson and the Nullifiers, which addresses the tensions of the Nullification Crisis of 1832 to 1833. The songwriter shares insights about federal law's perspectives, while the hater will argue from the standpoint of South Carolina. After clips of the song play, both will be asked questions and given a chance to respond. Let's begin with the first song clip.
Why Yankee land is at a stand and all in consternation, for in the South they make a round and all about nullification. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. Our foes are few, our hearts are true, and Jackson is quite handy.
Okay, let's hear from our resident hater. What do you think about the South making a rout and the consternation?
It all started with the tariff of 1816 and 1824 passed by Congress after the War of 1812. Those legislators were aware of the cheaper goods offered from British merchants. As a result, they issued a tariff making these foreign exports much more expensive in an attempt to force southern states to buy from the growing textile industry in New England. Then the Tariff of 1828, or as some would call the Tariff of Abominations, was signed by President Adams. This tariff went even farther with the tax than the previous other two.
You say here that Jackson is quite handy. What did you mean by that?
Later that same year as the Tariff of 1828, Andrew Jackson was elected with Vice President John C. Calhoun. When Andrew Jackson took office in 1829, many people expected Jackson, a Southern slave owner and supporter of states' rights, to nullify the tariff, but Jackson held firm on the tariff. Because of the War of 1812, he was concerned with paying off the national debt. He even had his Secretary of Treasury draft a plan to pay it off. He refused to nullify the tariffs in an attempt to boost the economy with the support of a growing northern manufacturing industry.
The Southern aides are bustering birds, their cash they think is handy, but we of the North are the right sort and the Union is the dandy. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. Stand to your arms, nor fear alarms, just play Yankee Doodle Dandy.
And why would you say that the Union is the dandy?
Maintaining the Union is crucial for ensuring national stability and balancing all of the different interests like farming, trading, and manufacturing. Andrew Jackson understood the need for compromise in his inaugural address, stating that the spirit of equity, caution, and compromise in which the Constitution was formed required that all interests be equally favored. He knew there were complexities in issues like the protective tariff, which affected different interests in different ways, and suggested that Congress abandon local feelings and prejudices in favor of a balanced well-being. Jackson called forth the exercise of that spirit of concession and conciliation that had previously united the country.
It was the pen at Bunker Hill for which old Warren fought there. From Southern boys, though they make a noise, we can have not to dread here. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. They know their slaves, the silly knaves, will soon find freedom handy. Nat Turner's plan, the daring men, may soon reach South Carolina. Then would the black their bodies, Haxes or Cato, Pomp and Dinah. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. These Southern folks may crack their jokes if Northerners are so handy.
Why does South Carolina fear letting go of their slaves?
Before the Nullification Crisis from 1832 to 1833, South Carolina was already grappling with economic decline due to seeing less agricultural growth compared to other states, limited industrial growth, and increased emigration. As protective tariffs were pushed, the state saw it as a threat to their stability and their way of life. It was a measure to safeguard their economy, which heavily depended on agriculture and enslaved labor. This fear of insurrection grew alongside the dependence of slavery, particularly as the enslaved population outnumbered the white population in many areas. In this era, states in New England diversified their income sources and faced little of the same economic strains. This disparity reinforced South Carolina's commitment to expand agriculture and slavery.
When In dire approach by British laws, they sent for our protection. We sent them Indian freedoms, cause North out of their nullification. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. Our hands are strong, the way not long, in submission is the dandy.
Who was the biggest supporter in the attempt to nullify federal laws?
The biggest supporter of nullification was Vice President John C. Calhoun. He published a 35,000-word document titled Exposition. In it, he argued that the Union was composed of individual nation-states, linked by shared economic principles. He argued that federal tariffs like the Tariff of Abominations showed how the government was incapable of understanding the intricacies of global and national markets in a way that significantly harmed Southern interests. In his Fort Hill address, Calhoun highlighted the growing dissimilarity of interests between states as a major cause of national conflict, advocating nullification as a means to protect state rights against the despotic power of the federal government. This led to the Ordinance of Nullification being passed by South Carolina on November 24, 1832.
Their cotton bags may turn to rags if Eastern men don't buy them. For other gold they may be sold, or their slaves may yet destroy them. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. If the cotton bags don't find a sale, their cash won't be so handy.
You mentioned that their cotton bags may turn to rags if Eastern men don't buy them. What did you mean by that?
Throughout the colonial and early national periods, South Carolina had sustained substantial economic growth and prosperity. This had created an extremely wealthy and extravagant low country aristocracy whose fortunes were based first on the cultivation of rice and indigo, and then on cotton. Then the state was devastated by the Panic of 1819. The depression that followed was more severe than in almost any other state of the Union. Moreover, competition from the newer cotton-producing areas along the Gulf Coast, blessed with more fertile lands that produced a higher crop yield per acre, made recovery painfully slow.
When we our glorious Constitution formed, these Southern men declined it, but soon they found they were unarmed and petitioned to sign it. Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. Now like the snake, torpid and break, they think nullification is handy.
Now, Hader, what do you think about the South rejecting the Constitution?
At first, the Southern states were really skeptical about the Constitution. They were wary of granting power to a central government. So, in a way, they declined it, like stated in the stanza. But soon enough, they realized that by staying out of the Union, they were politically weak, unarmed, if you will. They couldn't protect their own interests and ultimately had no choice but to accept the Constitution. They needed the protection and strength that came from being part of the United States.
Our country's cause, our country's loss, we ever will defend, sir. And if they do not gain applause, my song was never penned, sir. To sound the trumpet, beat the drum, play Yankee Doodle Dandy. We Jackson boys will quickly come and be with our rifles handy.
And this line, with our rifles handy, what does that refer to?
Andrew Jackson responded to the Ordinance of Nullification with military action by sending General Winfield Scott to South Carolina and give the state until February 1st of 1833 to enforce the tariffs. Jackson asked Congress to give him more power to deal with it. January 21st of 1833, Senator William Wilkins suggests the Force Bill, also known as the Bloody Bill. This law allowed the president to use military enforcement. However, to prevent civil uprising, Senators Henry Clay and Vice President John C. Calhoun drafted the Compromise Tariff of 1833 in late February, easing the economic burden on the Southern states and avoiding immediate conflict.
The Wellington Invincibles at New Orleans were beat, sir, and do the Southerners think their pills will frighten us to retreat, sir? Sing Yankee Doodle Doodle Doo, Yankee Doodle Dandy. We love our friends, but secret foes may find our courage is handy.
You know, flash forward to the future, and South Carolina is the first state to secede from the Union in the Civil War. What can you say about this?
Coincidence that South Carolina tried to nullify the laws from the federal government, and then 30 years later, they're the first to secede. This event paved the way to show just how far South Carolinians were willing to go to protect their economic interests and resist what they thought was Northern control.
What do you think can be said about the lasting impact of that?
It served to highlight how different their interests were growing. It wasn't only about taxes, it was about two different ways of life. The North was industrializing and as a result relied on federal power. The South, on the other hand, maintained their agricultural society, dependent on slavery. The Nullification Crisis showed those divisions and deepened their distrust.